So Art Basel is the holy grail of the art fair calendar, the most important art fair in the world by far. It's the oldest as well. This year it was going to celebrate its 50th anniversary with pomp and a lot of events surrounding it. And unfortunately, it's not going to happen. It's actually closed. But fortunately for us, it's open online. So every year, the best galleries all over the world vie to have a spot, to have a booth at Art Basel. It's very competitive. It's very hard to get in unless you already have connections or you've already participated or you have a very strong program. So what it means for us is that we will see one of the best artworks in the world in this presentation that comprises 282 galleries this year from 35 countries. Of course, we're not going to see everything, and this is just a little introduction. And afterwards, I'll show you certain booths of certain galleries. And I have to say, it was extremely difficult to pin down my top 10 selection. It's very subjective and certainly impossible to pick the best 10 booths or even artworks. So just take it with a grain of salt. I think a lot of the work is great, and you should take your time if it's possible for you, because the fair ends tomorrow at 1 p.m. Greenwich London time. They'll be turning off the website. You won't be able to see the booth. So after our conversation, I really encourage you to go and take a look at other booths, at other artists, because it's a unique opportunity. And I think we should just start with looking at the actual pieces. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay. If you don't hear me or you don't see the screen, feel free to write in the chat window. And we will start right away with this piece. Stephen Friedman Gallery is based in London. It has a headquarters there. It has several locations, and it's one of the top galleries overall in London for sure. And the artists we're looking at is Channing Hansen. Channing is based in Los Angeles, and he's sort of a late bloomer. But before I'll tell you more about his biography, let's take a closer look at the piece, because this is the first piece I saw and decided right away that this is going to be in my top 10. It's actually hand knit. Every single one of these units, of these square modules, is hand knit. And then the yarn is put, the fabric is put over a frame, a wooden stretcher. You can actually see them through the wool. And Channing is incredible in many ways. First of all, he doesn't only make the piece by itself, he also sort of makes the wool. So he dyes it, he cleans it, he dyes it, he spins it. Sorry, I'm going to allow one more person in. And I'll show you a few examples of how he actually does it. So this is another piece by him where the modules are separated. And this is Channing himself. He's 48 years old, and he's been making art since the 90s. And only recently, about 6 years ago, he sort of appeared onto the international art scene. He was included in the very important show in Los Angeles at the Hammer Museum that's called Made in LA. And now he has a gallerist there, Mark Selvin Fine Art, who showed him in Frieze LA last year. And he is showing in London. And look at him right here, sort of making a performance out of his practice. And for him, it's very much performative because he believes in transformation of energy from the wool, I'd say from the sheep directly. And what's interesting that he actually sources his wool from a farm in Idaho where they grow a few special breeds of sheep, very rare. And then he makes the wool and he makes the piece. But when it comes to the actual pattern, so let's go back to the work in Art Basel, he actually uses computer algorithm to create the pattern, and then he knits it by hand. For instance, last year, I'm not sure about this piece, but for the piece in Los Angeles, he based that computer algorithm on his own, the makeup of his own DNA. So you can imagine the multiple layers of this work that uses new technology, science. Sometimes he actually works with a friend who is a NASA scientist to produce this phosphorescent paint or dye for the wool so that it's sort of fluorescent. And then he uses very basic craft, right? That's centuries old knitting, incorporating it all into a minimalist structure, just basic squares in this particular case, sort of illuminating the very severe and serious sterile structure of traditional minimalism with the warmth of human hand and this very visceral, vivid, joyful color. So I just thought I couldn't walk past this work. I have to share with you because it's interesting on so many levels. And another interesting fact about Channing is that he took up knitting just because his mind was anxious and wandering outside of his studio when he was not producing art. So he decided to do this and he became a professional knitter. And in the end, this became the foundation of his most sought after work. So I thought it was a cool story. Let's move to the next artists, and you'll see how I navigate the website, so you could do it by yourself later on. You can pick a gallery that you like to see. You can search by artists. So let's say we are searching for Meiro Koizumi. It's a little bit awkward. It leads you to the gallery first, and you have to scroll through to see the actual piece, but that's how we'll see quite a few. So this is my top 2, or the second piece in my selection of top 10. Meiro Koizumi is a Japanese artist and film director. And these 2 works, actually not 1, 2 that I picked, are works on paper and are relatively affordably priced, just in terms of the prices at this fair that they are. You'll see very high because galleries try to bring their top ticket items to Art Basel, as they know that collectors from all over the world will be visiting, some very serious museum curators and private collectors. So prices across the board are usually higher than at other fairs, but $14,000 is affordable within this context. So back to Meiro. These are works on paper that they are charcoal drawings. Both of the pieces. I'll show you a larger view of them. And they are basically film stills by another director who is greatly admired by the artist. His name is Yasujiro Ozu. Ozu is known for his films in the 50s and 60s, post-war Japan. And what's interesting in this particular work, that Meiro adds a bit of a haunting air clouds sort of erasure to the characters of the stills. Here's another one, and that's the second work at the fair. And it has to do with the war. Ozu, the original director, participated in a Sino-Japanese war, which lasted from 1937 through 1945. And eventually it sort of became a part of the Second World War. It's when Japan invaded China. Some scholars decide on 1931 as the beginning of the war. And the director was sent to the front to invade China with the Japanese army. And the initial plan of his was that he was going to make some notes. He was preparing drafts of scenes for his films that he was going to show after the war about the life of soldiers at the front. And the experience that he went through was so gruesome and so difficult that he couldn't make any film that has to do with war afterwards. He didn't even include one battlefield scene in any of his films. And as you can see, even from these two stills, they were films about marriage and relationships between generations, about family life. So nothing about the war. And it's a very important subject in contemporary art in general, and psychology, the erasure, self-erasure of memories and the repression of trauma. And Meiro addresses this subject by adding these scratched, sort of erased characters, and even the actual erasure, the gesture of the artist sort of corresponds with the work of memory. And by bringing back the trauma that's being repressed, he's trying to heal it. We will see that this is sort of a red thread that goes through a lot of contemporary work with so many wars waged in the 20th century and even right now. So Meiro is just one example. And let's see, the next artist I wanted to show you is, by the way, Annette Gelling Gallery is in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. So number 3, Mark Bradford's work, I think is sort of related to the previous 2 pieces. Mark is showing Westhoven Worth. It's one of the mega galleries, one of the most important and powerful powerhouses, powerful galleries. They're based in many countries on both sides of the Atlantic, Switzerland, England, the US, New York, and LA. So no wonder that Mark Bradford is represented by them, because I'll show you a bit of close-ups and scaled view. Mark is probably the most important, or rather expensive, as far as the market goes, artist today, and definitely African American artist. You see this painting costs $5 million. As far as I know, it's already sold. And he fetches very high prices, both at auction and in the primary market. Beautiful details and colors, yes, absolutely. So what's the connection with Meiro? This is also about layering and erasure. Mark is from Los Angeles. He is a queer African-American artist and activist. He grew up in a challenging neighborhood in Los Angeles, Lamette Park. Okay, I'm admitting one more person. Hi, Ray. And his work he works in a number of media, but his most sought after paintings like this consist of layers and layers of various paper sources that he ideally, at the very beginning, he would pick up on the street. They would be posters, they would be local notices in Los Angeles about bail bonds, about jobs, about cars for sale and things like that. Let's see a little bit closer. So you understand how these are layers and layers of paper glued together and then scratched through and painted over. And the idea is to reveal all these various layers that could really correspond to so many things, like layers of memory, personal memory, as well as sort of collective social memory. And the title of this work would point to the fact that it's about social memory, in this case, the press of democracy. The title itself, as the explanation here tells us, comes from a chapter from Gotham, a book by Edwin Burrows and Mike Wallace, dedicated to the history of New York City. And to me, it's made it in 2020, and it's an extremely relevant piece. I see this almost like remnant of a earthquake, of the earth opening up, scorched desert, or the cityscape. And a lot of critics allude to the fact that Mark's work looks like aerial views of cities, or in this case, it could be even a map of the United States of America, you know, in terms of the shape, right? Let's look at the video with a bit of a close-up. And it certainly has to do with today, with the social unrest, Black Lives Matter, with the fact that once you push a population or a segment of a population for years, at some point there will be an explosion and there will be resistance. It's just a matter of time, and this is what we are going through right now. Please pay attention to the beautiful texture of the work that, to me, has to do with so many art historical references, starting from maybe Jackson Pollock and his splashes to Art Brut, you know, primitive art, maybe by Jean Dubuffet, but I won't make too many references to actual artists in case you might not know these examples, but just to give you an idea of how art historically educated and well-versed Mark is. Let's go to another artist in Hauser and Wirth program as well. Let's see. They have quite a few. I would love to talk about everybody, but we'll just spend the whole night walking through the fair with me. Okay, let's do it this way. You can also search by artists, favorite artworks. Here you go. Actually, this is a Dutch painter and creator of videos and performance artist, Erik van Lieshout. I know some of you know Dutch. If I don't pronounce it right, please correct me. I see personally in this painting a crowd being bulldozed by a bunch of vehicles. Again, reference to contemporary situation. And this work is interesting on its own to me, both in terms of its relevance and also execution, because it's a complex sort of agglomeration of maybe stenciled parts where he uses vinyl and also contact crayons and ink. I see there's a comment. Oh, thank you, Royce. Les Hoot, right? That's the way you pronounce his name. But what I am interested in showing you with this work is the fact that you can watch a lot of extra videos on Art Basel's webpage. Last time when they launched their viewing rooms in Hong Kong back in the winter, it wasn't the case, but here they introduced this video capability. So a lot of galleries supplemented the works with videos by artists talking about them or close-ups of the work and things like that. So I encourage you to look at them and familiarize yourself with the painting, sculpture, and film deeper as far as that goes. And through this video, in this particular case, I discovered another fantastic piece by this artist. That's actually a video that he filmed, a film that he made in the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. And the artist himself is very eloquent and charismatic, so I let you speak about it a little bit, and then we can move further. So it's a really good way to expand your reach beyond what's shown in the gallery's viewing rooms. So it's just about a minute. I'll show you. It's a fascinating project.
Is filmed in the tunnels, in the basements of the Hermitage. The Hermitage has a lot of mice. The daughter of Peter the Great, she started to bring in cats. The cat people who worked for the cat, they got paid. Then there was the revolution with the Soviet Union, they don't get paid. And then there was the Second World War, and all the cats died. The people eat the cats, and all the cats were died. When the war was over, there came hundreds of new cats from Holland. So I stayed 2 months with the cats, but I like really the smell at the end. I worked with the volunteers who work with the cats all the time. So I start cleaning up the whole cellar. I made a whole new cat gallery, new cat climbing structures, cat hotel rooms. In London, I'm showing the basement film, the cat film back in the cellar. So I make a tunnel structure, same shape of the tunnels at the Hermitage, and I put the same posters I made there in Russia, very political posters. I also put many new posters I just made last week about the Brexit, because also it's one big political thing here in London, because it's also connected with what I'm doing, what people are doing in Russia. Think about that, what's going on here in London. The world gets polarized now, like with populists like Putin or Le Pen or here the Brexit. How harder the world gets polarized, how the more the artist has to speak up with the people. I think
he's charming, isn't he? Just an adorable personality and very active in his political pursuits in the work. And I think, to me, that story with him going to the Hermitage and finding that basement with the cats and with female volunteers who come to feed them every day for free, and him transforming that space and cleaning it up and turning it into a cat hotel is just incredible. And to be honest, it has a lot of resonance with Russian history, with Russian political reality today, with dissidents, with non-conformist artists who couldn't practice openly, starting from the 1960s and onwards up until the 80s and the dissolution of the Soviet Union. It has to do with artists today, and even to my mind with Pussy Riot, right? Cats. The artist collective, a few members of which were put to prison in Russia for their artistic activity. And another interesting fact about that video is that after Eric went back to his home country, Piotrovsky, the director of the Hermitage, actually bought a washing machine for the ladies in the basement who take care of the cats, so that they can wash the cloths that the cats sleep on, rather than washing them by hands as they had been doing previously. So art can be very different, both in terms of its content and its media, and can really lead you down the rabbit hole of learning and associations and interesting facts. Okay, moving on, our number 5 gallery and artist is Victoria Miro. Let's go there. And Adriana Varejao. Okay, let's see. There are a couple of artists I wanted to tell you in this gallery, but Adriana is the one we'll go to next. She's a Brazilian artist, and I only now am realizing how similar the composition is to Mark Bradford's painting, being a completely different medium. And in the artwork's details, you actually see the medium, the dimensions, the materials used for it. And this is oil and plaster on canvas. So this is sort of just 2 layers, and the cracks are produced by using plaster. And the object that Adriana is actually referring to in this painting is ceramic tile. Her work is large scale. It's sort of a reference to walls covered with tiles, and not just to the little separate tiles themselves. And this is the kind of tile, and I'll show you actually how they look like, that are produced in Portugal, that were introduced and imported, I'd say, to Brazil by Portuguese colonizers. But this is the tile that has so many other cultural connections and nods. It's Chinese ceramics, right? Black, sort of white and blue, very, very recognizable. It's Dutch ceramics as well. And even in Portugal itself, it was, this type of tiles was influenced by the Moors. So it came from the Arab world. So what Varejao does, we'll go back to her, is expanding the size of the tiles and usually introducing these cracks to refer to the complex history of cultural influence and dissemination, but also again to the fact that if you colonize a country, if you invade a nation, there's always going to be resistance sooner or later. So in that sense, it's, although it's about Brazil, not the United States, very similar to Mark Bradford's thinking, perhaps. And then there's one more female artist I wanted to show you in this booth. It's funny to say booth because they're really just web pages, but nonetheless, we'll adjust to contemporary reality. And this is the booth of Victoria Miro Gallery, by the way, a very strong program. It's a London-based gallery, one of the key galleries in London and in the world, I'd say. The work is Sarah Zay. Let's take a closer look. It's a painting. It's also a layered painting. I think there's a connection with amongst all these works I pick. See how many different media she uses: acrylic and oil paint and ink and aluminum, archival paper, photography. You see some figurative elements in it as well. And to me, it was a very surprising work because Sarah Zay usually creates sculpture. That's what she's known for. I'll show you a couple of examples. Right here, this is a sculptural composition that is owned by MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art in New York. And there's another sculpture of hers. This is not a photograph. This is her photograph. This is a photograph of her three-dimensional sculpture. So you see that her overarching idea is to assemble all these different elements and objects and connect them by metal rods or by cords to create this very precariously looking balance. And it's certainly has a resonance in today's world where we're saturated with objects, where we're over consuming, maybe less so in the past 6 months, but we're also saturated with images. And the less we are consuming physically right now, the more we are consuming digitally, including yourselves watching my video right now. And hopefully that's an investment of your time. But the reason I wanted to show you the sculptures is so that you understand that this is a very different medium for her. And in the accompanying video, I'll show you just a couple of seconds, she actually explains how this is very closely connected to her sculptural practice, because the images that she is assembling in this piece are all so disparate, and they all come from different sources, from the internet, maybe from her own personal memories. You'll see a wall with tons of different artistic references and little I think postcards or stamps with paintings by other artists that she looks at before she assembles this panorama of history, of memories, and of visual influences. I'll show you just a couple of seconds. Let's see, and we will move on. But you'll see how the sculptures look very similar, 310, to the paintings. So it's a continuum.
On the side, I was always doing films and I was always doing flat work. So in some ways, these are kind of like the secret studio practices, these sort of more private activities. This show is kind of a preservation of that transference of the intimate into a public space.
Fascinating, as far as I'm concerned, how she can assemble all these objects in all different media, whether it's video or two-dimensional pieces or everyday objects, and make these very organic and harmonious looking agglomerations. Okay, this is number 6, and we are moving to number 7, to a very prominent gallery run by an Austrian person, an Austrian gallerist, Tadeusz Ropak. I'm sure some of you have heard his name. Here it is. He has a couple of stunning spaces in London, in Paris, and also in Salzburg. He assembled some of the heavyweights of the art world in this viewing room. I'm not going to talk about all of them. Some of them to me are just the usual suspects that appear in all the art fairs he goes to, or a lot of them. I'm going to stop right here. Let's take a closer look. I'll give you a chance to look at the details before I jump into the explanation. Pay attention to the color palette, very restrained. Just reds and a touch of white. To the gestures, to the width of the strokes, to the beautiful, delicious texture of the paint. And perhaps some of you will recognize what other painting he's referring to right here. Ray, we will return to Saradze a little bit later. Thank you for the question. So anybody recognize the original source for this painting? Napoleon crowning himself emperor. This is actually a variation on the painting by Jacques-Louis David, or David, the famous neoclassical French artist who actually painted the self-coronation of Napoleon during Napoleon's era, right? The 1800s. And I'll show you the original painting so you can compare. But just for a second, I'll tell you about Yan Pingming. He's a very prominent Chinese artist. And this is what he usually does. He paints figurative work, usually portraits of well-known individuals, artists, Picasso, for instance, politicians, Chairman Mao, actors, in a very restrained monochromatic palette, grays, blues, in this case it's red, and let's think about why he used this color for this particular piece, and usually with a very emotional gestural brushwork. So let's see the original painting that he's referring to. Very famous crowning of Napoleon that's housed in the Louvre Museum. And this is a real story. Napoleon sent the Roman Pope himself, Pius VII, at the time. He's sitting right here. He commissioned him to come to Paris, all the way from Rome, to put the crown on his head and to declare him the emperor. But at the last moment, Napoleon decided he was going to crown himself. And the original drawings for this painting right here actually depicted the real event. And Pius, sitting behind Napoleon in a sort of very depressed, subdued posture, is just a witness to the power, self-aggrandizing, and to Napoleon taking the power in his own hands. But with time, David changes the composition, and perhaps on the advice of his assistant. And the reality is that Napoleon is actually crowning his wife Josephine, Empress Josephine here, right? Although the original title still refers to the subject, to the composition that David wanted to show. So Yan Pingming picked the original drawing, and he cropped this grand painting with a lot of different characters to the crop that he was interested in. And actually, let me go back just for a second to show you this close-up of the Pope making a sign of blessing. It happened because Napoleon told the Pope at the last moment, why did I get you here all the way from Rome? You might as well do something. So the Pope blessed the ceremony. So that is the gesture that Yan Pingming is excluding from his painting. 2017 is the date of the work, but it could be 2020 as well, easily. I think many of you understand how relevant it is in today's political situation in many countries, including the one we're living in, or some of you, or most of you are. It's power usurping. Sorry, I have a couple of questions. Yeah, yeah, you guys are naming the possible character of this painting. Extra smear makes it look like he was shot from behind. Oh, that's an interesting comment. Even the red, to my mind, refers to the blood and to the greediness and to the brutality that any power can wield if it doesn't have any external breaks and it's self aggrandizing. And another very relevant connection is, of course, the closeness of the state with the church, and the church approving of the actions of the power, whether it's places in Eastern Europe right now, whether it's evangelical Christians approving racism and I'm speechless, approving so many atrocious things coming from the direction of the power, the ultimate power in this country. So I thought it was very strong of a painting, and I just couldn't fail to share it with you. Okay, I see another comment. 1 second. Napoleon holds the sword representing power through war. Absolutely, yeah, I just mentioned that the church is sort of silently watching the state conducting acts of violence. Okay, number 8. We are going to a Brazilian gallery that I personally like a lot. In this particular fair, they decided to be creative with the structure. They sort of divided the works thematically into 3 sets of a movie scene. I'm not going to go into detail. You can read it all in the description. Exterior day, some of the works interior day, and the third part is interior at night. But I will show you a couple of pieces up close. Actually, let's start with Ernesto Neto. Perhaps some of you know this artist. He is a very well-known Brazilian name in the art world. And this is sort of a typical sculptural installation that he makes. It's fabric that he made himself. It's about the weight of gravity. And he also includes a lot of materials that are native to Brazil. For instance, here it's cotton mash, beans, flour, corn, chickpeas, peas, lentils, right here, around it and in these little sacks. So when you see his sculptures in person, they are really overwhelming in a good way, because they emit a smell. They sort of create an aura. So you experience them with many senses. You see them, you see the color, you can touch them, you can walk inside, you can smell them. So it's an environment that he creates. And he included a little video of him making it, shot on his iPhone, and I'll show you a couple of seconds. I think it's adorable and really tells you a lot about his process. Just a few seconds. I'll turn on the sound.
Ela sobe pelo sol, ela desce ela sobe pelo sol, ela desce pela vida.
so the idea is that he's singing and he's sort of in the flow, and I can imagine perhaps the basket weavers back in the day, or people working in the fields and singing and having this meditative state when their body is healing perhaps, and their mind is free. And this is, to me, the appeal of Ernesto's sculptures, that they, similarly to the first work that we saw today, they have this transfer of energy between the materials and between the viewer and the artist that's very palpable. And another little note on this sculpture is that I also think it's very relevant today, because it's a house within a house. And normally we feel like our houses are our fortresses. That's where we gain energy. That's where we feel protected and calm. But for the past few months, instead of being that, they are actually becoming a source of anxiety, because we cannot leave them. Sometimes we feel trapped. And we are actually inundated with a 24-hour news cycle, because we are at home and we need to know what's going on, and we're working from our computers. And it's almost like we are in need of another house within a house, a transitional object, they call it in psychology. It could be for instance, kids use toys or, plush animals to sort of have that feeling of protection. And this is the kind of toy for adult kid in our times. And there's another work I wanted to show you in Fortes Daloe Gabriel viewing room. This is a gallery that was actually founded by two female gallerists, and then they appointed a male director. They turned him into a partner, so there are three of them now. Someone compared the Neto's piece to a treehouse. Absolutely, very, very much so. And going back to this work, it's by a female artist, Valesca Soares, who is quite well known internationally, and she's a conceptual artist. So oftentimes she would use found objects, existing, in this case, cigar boxes, and arrange them in a certain pattern, referring also to the structures of minimalism, to create a meaning and to extract a meaning that you will not necessarily see immediately just by seeing one of the pieces. So I'll show you an up-close view of some of these boxes. They're wooden, they were made by local artisans in Brazil, and they were not meant to constitute a very clear flow, but she found the boxes that would, and she arranged them in a way that they sort of form part of a continuous whole. A lot of layers to this work that you can find. There are lots of references. The immediate one to me, besides just being there being a community in Brazil and people being united by common roots, by common appreciation for the nature, it's also the opposite meaning. The fires happening in Brazil right now, and very difficult political situation happening there, with the person in power sort of supporting the decimation of nature with his greed. It's a reference to that as well. Especially these objects being cigar boxes, potentially explosives, right? We put cigars, lit them up, put them on fire. So it's another work by a female artist that I wanted to show you in a bit of a different medium, so you understand that oftentimes found objects arranged in a certain way and by an artist who has a consistent practice in this medium can be very powerful and say a lot. And number 9 is Tino Nasser. We're going to a Lebanese gallery. Sort of traveling around the world, I'm trying to show you galleries from different parts of the globe with a different approach. I wish I had more time to be more exhaustive, so forgive me if I forgot certain regions, but I'm doing what I can. So let's go. Oh, sorry. Favorite rooms. This might help. We are towards the end, by the way, just so you understand the timing. Here it is. So Sphere Semler Gallery is based in Lebanon, but also in Hamburg, Germany originally. It's founded by a powerful woman gallerist. And right now it's, thank you, Carol. Yes, Valeska has a studio in Brooklyn. A lot of the artists I'm talking about, even if they come from elsewhere, they are based in New York or have a studio in New York or Brooklyn. But Timo Nasseri, who is shown by Sphere Semler, focusing on the art from the Arab world, is Iranian. And I'd like you to look a bit closer at this piece to think about this shape and what it represents to you before you start reading the description. Because when I saw it for the first time, it actually reminded me a Mughal sword that I recently saw as an illustration of, it's housed at the Metropolitan Museum. And it's a very similar shape and a similar design. It's, in this case, actually is camouflage. I'll show you exactly what I mean. So this is the so-called razzle-dazzle pattern that was designed during the First World War for the ships that wouldn't be seen or recognized by the enemy, because it's hard to understand which direction they're going to. See, you don't know where the front is. It's a bit confusing when you look at them from far away. So this is the pattern that was effective, and a lot of artists, a few, claimed authorship of this print, including Pablo Picasso. And what's interesting is that it actually is so universal. It's so sort of international in nature. You know, I thought about a Mughal sword. Immediately, you could probably see some Latin American, Mexican, indigenous patterns, African, you name it, right? So it's a universal pattern that was co-opted by the West and used for military purposes that Timo is now reintroducing back into art, questioning authorship and the source of imagery and patterns, which probably is just in our human consciousness, and that's why it's so well spread all over the world. Also, relatively affordable price point for a painting, not a work on paper, for this fair. I'm surprised it's still available, or maybe they didn't bother writing that it's sold. And we are going to the last piece. And before we do it, I'll quickly show you a gallery that I thought got primitively creative, but in a cool way, with their organization of their collection. For each day of the fair, they picked a different color and organized the pieces that they show according to that color, which I think is very smart, as you know, coming from somebody who's worked at galleries and knows that side of things, because it allows you to show as many works as possible. And in the situation of an online fair like this, when you don't have to ship anything anywhere, it's very convenient, and you have many options to sell works. Let's see. We'll just take a quick glimpse and then go to our last artist. Okay. It's a Parisian gallery, by the way. And for today, we're lucky. They actually picked 2 colors instead of 1. They picked, as you can see, purple and gold. Perhaps both of them are royal colors, so they can get away with it. But whether it's the fact or not, we can just take a quick look and see how they got creative with it. So it's just another way for galleries to make it a little bit more eventful. Yeah, even this video with the golden still can pass for a golden work. Why not? Okay, and now we are going to the last piece that we will discuss today. It's shown by an Italian gallery. There's so many that I haven't showed you guys that I really wanted to. It was so hard to narrow it down, really. Matthew Brennan. Matthew Brennan is sort of the it artist right now. Several galleries are showing him in Basel. He is represented by James Cohen Gallery in New York. But right here, it's Joe Marconi, second generation Italian gallerist, who is showing Unfinished Feelings. And I think we can all relate to this work on paper right now. Hand sanitizer on one side, and on the other, a vintage champagne. I actually Googled the price of this Romanée Conti from 1962. And you can buy one on eBay for something around $7,000 or $8,000. What is Matthew Brennan doing here, apart from reminding us about our coronavirus quarantine situation? Is sort of equaling the value of a vintage champagne bottle to a Purell hand sanitizer. Well, at least it's not toilet paper, right? So, at first, I wanted to pick this work as my favorite. A photograph by a German artist, Sabine Hornig, of an empty gallery and a reflection of the city in the gallery, which looks very much like my coronavirus situation in empty New York, surrounded by quiet streets and trying to take solace in the very nostalgic and poetic beauty of New York, devoid of crowds. But then I decided I'll just go with Matthew Brennan. It's a little bit more celebratory because as important as Purell is right now, champagne in the house, a vintage one, it's just the right time to break it and drink it. So I just wanted to end with thanking you for joining me today, because to me personally, out of this whole quarantine issue and problem came a lot of great solutions, came the opportunity to share my knowledge online, to take my tours, to take my advisory on the internet and talk to you directly, no matter where you are. And I hope that for you, discovering this fair right now and after we're over and maybe going through the work, it's going to help you, while your time, understand that no matter what happens with the world, artists continue to make work, artists continue to think, to heal the universe around them, to give us ideas to cling on to speak truth to power. And I think that's just a constant in the world, and that's why it still exists with all the dirt and problems and wars that it's been through. Okay, that's my little spiel. And if you guys have questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I'm going to turn off the screen sharing. And if you have questions, you can answer, you can post them via chat or via camera, via your microphone, whatever floats your boat. Whew. It's a lot of work, huh? No, it's just hot. Thank you. Matthew Brennan piece is iconic, right? Yeah, it will become history, right? Thank you. Very informative and fascinating. We'll try to look at this show tonight. Maria, you should. And if you guys have any questions, if you want me to give you advice on particular work that maybe you want to buy, or an artist that you now want to know more about, I'm here for you. I can be helpful. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you, Jane. It was a pleasure. And I don't see any questions. I'm sure there's a lot to digest. So terrific. Thank you, Karen. I appreciate it. Geometric design. Carol is sharing a sculpture with us. You guys are free to take a look. Thank you. I would love to know what the Zaya piece was sold for. What do you think of every singer? In terms of my opinion about separate artists or price points, I will be happily sharing it with you in a private consultation if you want to. It's easier for me if I get to know you, if I understand what your motivation is. Every singer is a great artist, but there are a couple of things that you need to know about her in terms of her price point, in terms of the dynamic of her career. To me, it's not always even. And the earlier pieces are very different from what she's doing now. So if you want to learn more, shoot me a more expanded email, and let's chat in person. Let's get to know each other. Okay. Yep, you're welcome. Thank you, Elena. Your enthusiasm for Art Basel is infectious. I am glad, because if this fair is not exciting to you, I don't know what can be, even online. And I also have to tell you that it's so difficult to focus on looking through the fair on the screen like that, because when you are there, you walk through the booth very quickly, especially, you know, when you have a trained eye, you already know what to look for. You can pass through a lot of galleries at first without stopping, and then you stop by and you talk to the galleries you are, you know, interested in, and you look at the work closer. Right here on the screen, you don't have such an opportunity. You have to look through every single piece. It's very time consuming, but it is what we have right now. Thank you. If you guys have questions afterwards, feel free to email me, to write to me on Facebook, to DM me on Instagram. My website is artexplained.net. Instagram, I have a couple, Dostupna в искусстве in Russian, artexplained.net in English, and my Dutch master's webinar is coming up soon. I'll share it with you. And thank you so much. Now you know where to find me. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night. I'll see you soon. Bye.